landlords maintain their buildings properly? Can you, would you, and if so, how would you strengthen the rent control ordinance to force landlords, if you will, to maintain those services? And first, I'd call on Salaam Ismail.
You see in more poor communities, these slumlords, they give 2 cents about their tenants, and they let their building go down, and you see rat infested and roaches and what have you. I get a chance to see these buildings all across the city. The mayor should take some kind of progressive moves. I mean, if I wasn't a politician, I'd probably say, don't pay the landlord nothing until you fix up the apartment. We need some kind of laws that can force these landlords to fix up and maintenance their apartments and make it livable for folks. When you find some of these buildings that I go in some of the poor areas of the city, and you see them don't have heat, and you see broken windows, you see toilet commodes that's broken and leaking, and water coming from the ceiling and what have you, but yet they asking for $500, $600, $700 a month rent from people who are struggling every day to try to make ends meet. These greedy, slimy landlords have to be dealt with. And as a mayor, I think we need some rough and rugged ordinance that can put them in their place. And if it's involved in not paying them rent for a couple of months, then maybe they will do something. I think we need mayors should have on hand a health inspector that will go out to these buildings and force them to either clean up their act or they'll suffer some court cases. And that's what I would do as mayor. We have to make what is worthwhile in terms of paying rent versus the kind of services, the kind of conditions that the tenants live in. Until we have that kind of mayor to do that, you're going to continue to see poor, unconditioned buildings. You're going to see dilapidated, deplorable kinds of disgusting kind of slime that I see sometimes in some of the poor areas of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail. Next up, Bob Jaspan. Jim Dembeck asked if we could bring the microphone to us rather than us coming to the microphone. Might have been a little easier. But the maintenance of the buildings should be, without question, controlled by the City of Elizabeth. We have the legislation in place. The problem is enforcement. A deteriorating building takes away from the city, takes away from the pride of the community. People, they don't want to live in deteriorating buildings. So we do have to work with the landlords. We have to have some communication with them so that they understand the laws. And for them to, whatever the problem might be with a tenant, they have to address it. We do have the Fair Rental Housing Board, which hears the problems. If there is a problem with a particular landlord, the tenant files a complaint, whether it's for a broken door, fallen ceilings, whatever the case might be. We do have this in place. The problem, we don't have the enforcement. As in many cases in the city, we don't have the officers or the direction from the mayor. I've been in touch with Director Rapp many a times, addressing problems. Problems aren't resolved. Sometimes they're not even looked into. And the answer, Bob, I take the orders from upstairs. I said, Director Rapp, it's a very serious problem. We have to address it. He said, yes, Mr. Jaspan, yes, Councilman, I'll address it. Problems are still there today. So you have to have a strong mayor with the direction to give to the directors that are responsible to take care of the problems that we hear. Thank you, Bob. Would you like me to bring the microphone to you, Mr. Dembeck?
It would be again.
Anyway, well now...
Again for being a Republican.
microphone.
Now call upon Chris Bollwage.
This question strikes at the core of the campaign because Tom is broke. And Tom doesn't know it's broke because Tom doesn't come to forums like this, and Tom doesn't get out into the field and see what the problems are. So if, Tom, you listen to this, I want to tell you that it's broke, and you're not listening to the people of the city of Elizabeth. Because it's broke, we need strong code enforcement. We need strong code enforcement with landlords. We need strong code enforcement with homeowners. And we need strong code enforcement from City Hall. And it's not getting that way because Tom doesn't think it's broke. And the problem here is that tenants are respective and reflective of the current rent that they have. They demand the same services that they get when they move in. And if services are reduced in any way, shape, or form, they can withhold their rent and they can seek to put their rent into an escrow account until those services are returned to them. Frankly, though, it comes to the core of the problem in the legal department and our construction department in addressing the problem in an educational way. And we choose not to do that. We choose not to do that because Tom doesn't know it's broke, and we need to tell him it's broke. And I ask you to elect Chris Bollwage, Orlando Ajura, Patricia Perkins, and Ed Jackas and tell him it's broke. Thank you.
Jim Dembeck, unless you want me to answer the question before you see you sit up.
We're far from being alone in this problem. Every night in Channel 2 News, you see an expose of New York landlords and slumlords. We have them, and we're not alone. All the years I sat in the planning board, I looked to the city council to appropriate money to put the proper amount of inspection in the city building department. We never got it. Today, there is no enforcement of the ordinance of the city of Elizabeth, including rent and tenant maintenance, because there aren't the employees. They would never put them in the budget. For a town as large as Elizabeth, it's a disgrace. The enforcement of the rent, of the maintenance rules, of the illegal housing, of the illegal conversions, this city is terrible in that regard. One of the things that they added in this question was how I correlate rent control with this problem. I see it as a two-way street, and it scares me. When the rent control ordinance was up, I had resigned from the planning board, by the way, because I felt I couldn't run against an administration that I was part of. I'm not a prostitute. So when I knew I was going to run for mayor, I resigned. One of the things that I found when I was resigned, when the rent ordinance came up, owners of apartment houses were calling me, threatening me, and I was an ex-planning board chairman. I'm going to let my apartment go to hell. Boy, you know how that makes you feel to hear a man that owns 600 units in the town saying, if this goes through, I'm letting my apartments go to hell. That affects you, and you. This is why I think rent control is needed, but fairness is needed also.
Thank you, Jim. All right, the next question. Are you in favor of the efforts of some people, statewide and or locally, to destroy rent control, or not destroy, to decimate rent control by imposing a means test in order to be eligible for rent control? And please explain your answer. Mr. Dembeck.
Wait till you get your next bill. I'll get even with you, Mr. Pearson. I think the last 5 questions covered this. I think every one of us in the panel, we've all stated that we think there's a great need for rent control. I don't think any of us would say to you, tenants, or say to homeowners or building owners, we don't need it. So this question is rather redundant. Are we in favor of some people to eliminate it? I think everybody on the board said we're not. We're in favor of rent control, but it must be equitable, it must be fair, and it must further the goals of the city, not retract.
Mr. Bollwage.
Landlords are guaranteed under the Constitution a fair rate of return on their investment. They have the ability to seek a hardship appeal. They have the ability to go to the Fair Rental Housing Board in order to generate a hardship return on their investment. And the efforts to decimate rent control at the state level or any level is unfair to tenants, and it's unfair to people who live in subsidized housing. Rent control is an existence of the community that's not going to go away because it puts a cap on rents. It protects our seniors. It protects those that have the ability, that don't have the ability to pay such high increased rent. When you talk about state legislation and limiting rent control, you get to the same effect that happens here in city government. They don't go into the communities, as our mayor doesn't go into the communities to see what the problems are and to see where people have problems. I think when you talk about the state trying to decimate rent control, it's once again people not knowing the problem and then attempting to legislate it. I strongly believe that any effort on the state level to decimate rent control will fail.
Thank you, Chris. Bob Jaspan.
Time and time again, we said rent control is very, very important. I think tenants should be treated equally. I don't think we should look at their means to decide whether they should be eligible for rent control or not. All tenants, whether in the city or throughout the state, should be treated with the same respect. I don't think the state should come in and tell any city what they should do. We should enact the legislation ourselves within our community with the consideration of the people that live here.
Thank you, Bob, and Salaam, Ismail.
I guess it's pretty much consistent with the other folks here at the panel. The thing I'm concerned about is making sure rent control survive. If there is a group statewide trying to decimate rent control, then we should have a mayor that's down in the state also lobbying to keep it for the people. And I think that's pretty much where we at on this. I believe that rent control is alive and well and it's going to be here for a while. As long as people like you stay interested, stay aroused, and stay rallied up about the issue, rent control will always be here for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salaam.